We kind of started with a software company. I'm actually a software engineer by trade.
Okay.
Graduated from College of William and Mary up in Williamsburg
Yep.
about a year ago. And while we were in college, we started this whole hotel management platform. It was really modern. The reason we actually did that was mainly because my family is actually in the hospitality industry here in Virginia and in Texas. So I had a
What
lot
was
of
it called?
experience. I'm sorry.
What was it called?
Well, they own a whole bunch of hotels here in
Gotcha.
Virginia and then also in Texas. So everything from like Hilton to Marriott's and then independent properties and kind of everything in between. So that old company was called Zerge, and we essentially kind of built that out or started building that out while we were in college. Me and a group of partners, and yeah, we kind of as soon as we all graduated, we kind of went directly to New York City because we had some funding and had some initial traction and things were going well. We were part of this incubator program up there, a tech accelerator, if you will, called Dream It New York,
Yep.
and we were up there for about 3 months. We had an office, and everything was great, but I think after a while we ran into some issues, on our end. The enterprise software market is really tricky, especially for young guys just getting out of college. Just because the guys on the other end, they kind of want to see a whole different persona when they're trying to make these deals. So we kind of hit some walls that we just couldn't get over,
Yep.
simply because of our age or whatever it may have been. So I think recently we've kind of been without, unfortunately, I can't give up too many details about this project in particular or that project in particular. But we're in the process of essentially getting that company acquired by another company. So during that whole process, as you can imagine, that kind of takes a while. So
Sure.
that's how we kind of come to this now, where kind of through the experiences I had with Zerge, our first company, this whole Code and Quill project kind of materialized. And then, of course, the different things I learned through all that through the previous company was able to apply those bits and pieces of knowledge into, kind of what we got going on now.
Sweet. So the Kickstarter, so Code and Quill is the name of it.
Yeah.
You guys just recently did for a little over 46,000.
Yeah.
I found out about just by searching, local stuff,
Sure.
um, and a lot of people actually had been mentioning it. So it's cool to be able to. It's always cool to see someone in your backyard doing some of the stuff that you guys are doing. Tell us a little bit about what it is and how you came up with the idea to do it.
Sure, sure. So I'm glad we had that initial introduction, just because it kind of ties into all this. So Code and Quill, kind of give you a quick overview, is basically the idea is to create tools specifically for designers, developers, the whole segment of the population that considers themselves a creative individual, whether that's a photographer, or engineer, or architect, whatever it may be. But that's kind of what the underlying principle is. And the reason we kind of came to that, as far as the kind of global company vision, was because when I was working as the CEO of Zerge for the past year and a half, almost 2 years actually, um, one of my principal roles was product direction, product development, and I actually did a lot of the engineering myself as well. And one of the issues I always ran into personally was, a lot of times people tend to forget that a lot of the things that we do start on paper, right? Like a lot of the ideas that we have, a lot
Sure.
of the ways that we visualize things. It's one thing to open up Microsoft Word or Pages or whatever, and start typing things down in a list format, however you may take notes or whatever. But it's another when you have a visualization in your head and you need to get it down on paper. You need to really start kind of freely expanding on those ideas that you're having. And so I actually spent a good bit of time, in all honesty, looking for a simple notebook that would allow me to kind of do that, that really kind of put together, for me in particular during this time of my life, it was I needed a notebook that allowed me to kind of sketch out algorithms, sketch out the way I saw the web application that we were developing at the time, how to wireframe that out, all that kind of stuff. Kind of the technical nitty gritty, but the more visual aspect of that. I needed a notebook that allowed me to do that, but at the same time allowed me to write down, lists and I have I have a little bit of OCD when it comes to like having very clean, writing and trying to keep everything properly segmented and everything. So, I was looking for a tool that really encapsulated all those needs of mine, and I couldn't find anything because basically all that was out there, in terms of quality and durability and these specific features that I wanted, you know, the closest thing I could find was, buying one of those Moleskine notebooks, and even they didn't really cater to what I was looking for. And that's kind of the first product that really brought out the whole idea of this Kickstarter project that we started, because when I realized that I had that need, I was asking a few of my other, software engineering buddies and stuff, and I was like, "Hey guys, would you be interested in this kind of thing?" And almost all of them were like, "If you made that, I would buy it tomorrow." And so, when I got that small amount of validation, one of the things that I really learned through the whole process with Zerge and my previous company was, that market validation up front is perhaps the most important thing you can do before you jump into anything.
How do you I absolutely agree with that. How do you qualify that? So a lot of people, and I call this the mom effect, right? Where people will say, hey, if you just give me that, or if you just give me this, then I'll buy it. Well, it's like your mom saying that you're a good singer, but then you actually go try out for something, you try out for American Idol, and you find out that Simon Cowell thinks that you're not that good. So how are you able to say, okay, friends that said, I'll do it,
Sure.
and then actually verifying or validating that they would do that? Because I think there can be a big misstep in an early stage company for believing what someone says when they might not necessarily, they might have been being nice. Yeah. How did you kind of get through that validation piece?
Sure. I actually took money from them right there.
Okay, good. There's no better transaction than a financial transaction.
Yeah, I mean, it was just kind of like, look, guys, I'm actually going to be doing this, and if it doesn't come to fruition, I'll give you your cash, back or whatever. But, if I do make these, and sorry about the doorbell, if I do make these, then, that's my money, and you're getting the notebooks that you're ordering. So, yeah, I made that transaction right there, which even then, it was still kind of like, this is very minor validation in my mind anyway, because at the end of the day, you might have friends and family that are willing to put down $15 and $20 regardless of what you're making, right? So that's kind of where Kickstarter came into play, where they're really, I mean, I can't think of a better way with the technology that we have, the opportunities that we have to validate a consumer level product in a very efficient and noticeable manner. And Kickstarter just kind of, it's exploded, obviously, as everybody knows, over the past, some years, but it's such a great platform for really figuring out, what is the actual demand outside of my immediate bubble of friends and family and colleagues. What is the actual demand for something like this? And it kind of gives you your first taste at that, while also making sure that you understand kind of what kind of marketing goes into this kind of thing, how you source your products, how you manufacture them. You kind of get a little taste of all that in a small batch, just to make sure that, one, you're cut out for it, and two, you actually have a demand for what you're making. And I think it's a great platform to actually consolidate all those things.
So what kind of research did you go into to figure out those things? You talked about the manufacturing aspect of it, the marketing aspect of it. There's a lot of studies out there that will tell you kind of the ways that you're supposed to put together a Kickstarter campaign or any kind of crowdfunding campaign. What kind of research did you do to kind of, or look into case studies of how that you wanted to tackle this for your project?
Yeah, so I spent a inordinate amount of time scouring Kickstarter itself, actually, for every project that was remotely related to mine, and even some that were completely outside the scope. And I wasn't mainly looking at the products themselves. My big, point in all of that was to actually see how well they succeeded beyond their goals that they were looking for, what kind of updates they were posting, how did they set up the campaign itself, and then how did they set up the ecosystem around their campaign during the time frame of that campaign. So for me, I was able to kind of make a list essentially of all these projects that fell into three categories. One being they vastly exceeded their goal. Two, they met their goal, basically they met their goal, but not by some crazy amount. And then the people that just failed. And by doing that, you were able to, what I did actually was I drew the similarities between each of those three tiers, saying, okay, what made these guys, maybe not even in the same product groups, but just people in general that vastly exceeded their funding goal in the given amount of time, what did they do and what similarities did they have? And then next year, same thing, next year, same thing. And in doing that, I was kind of able to see a bit of a pattern in terms of, what kinds of people were able to just crush it, what kinds of people were able to, draw enough attention to meet the mark, and then the kinds of projects that just weren't making the cut. And I think that kind of provided one of the best experiences and best forms of research for me, specifically for the Kickstarter aspect.
So, from an infrastructure standpoint, how many days did you do it for? I can't remember.
30
days. How much? A lot of people say that you need to have a tremendous amount of money already kind of sold before you actually press go. Did you have any of that kind of funding ready before, like you had previewed people and saying, hey, I'm going to press go, can you go and do this? Did you do anything like that?
Actually, I spent there was a little bit of money involved, but to the tune of about $800 that I put into it before, and during the whole Kickstarter campaign.
What about like from other people that you knew that could be contributors? Where did you, if those people that could pledge, did you contact a lot of people like weeks beforehand saying, look, this is going to be the date that we go live. When we do, I'm going to send you the link. You've already said you're going to commit. Did you do any of that stuff in place, or did you do it all during those 30 days?
So yeah, I didn't do that with individual people. What I did was I had a list of about 40 to 45, I can't remember the exact number, blogs, influential, social media individuals, websites that really focus on the niche that I was trying to, cater to with my product. So I had a list of, publications essentially and individuals I could really, that had big followings of their own, because I knew that I was getting into this. I was coming from an enterprise market, right? So the groups that I was revolved around in most parts, they're not your general consumer market for, the kinds of people that I was trying to cater this product to. So I didn't have that following of individuals that I could just, reach out to outside of course, friends and family, that I could reach out to and be like, here's 1,000 people. This is what I'm doing. Let's go. I didn't have that available. So I essentially did what I thought was the next best thing, was curate this list of these, these big websites, big blogs, and even, small, more niche focused blogs, because, in all honesty, there is some sort of blog or website for everything you can imagine, out there. And a lot of that, there are big publications for every individual niche. And those guys are the most, targeted audience that you're going to get. So, I did, a couple weeks of research about that and curated that list of bloggers and whatnot.
You just create a spreadsheet for that, or how did you kind of, how did you differentiate what each group was?
Sure.
What was kind of the logistics piece of that?
Yeah, so essentially it was a big spreadsheet. And, I had, of course, the name of the publication, their URL, all the basic information, contact information, all that. And then I had one column that was essentially a rating of how popular they were in terms of page views, monthly visitors, that kind of thing. Because, of course, that kind of stuff is also publicly available.
Sure.
So I was able to kind of categorize each individual. And so I had a rating for that. And then I also had a rating that I essentially called the niche rating, which was a scale of 1 to 5, who their audience, how closely their audience resembled the kinds of people that I was trying to cater to. Mm-hmm. Now, that was more of a, qualitative kind of rating that I put on it. There was no particular quantitative data on that I could get, just because, of course, I don't have access to their demographic data. And so it was kind of based on the comments that I was seeing on each of these publications, what kinds of people tended to hang around there, what was their content like. So that's kind of what I focused on, and those two ratings kind of gave me a nice structuring of how I wanted to iterate through that list and reach out to these guys. So going back to your earlier question, one of the biggest things for me was to reach out to as many of those 40 to 45, individuals that I had on that list, and shoot them an email, say, hey, this is what I'm about to get into. It would be great if you could cover me. I would also love to send you a review sample when we get ours, and it would be fantastic. I think your audience would love it. So create a custom tailored message to each of these individuals, kind of playing to um, the kinds of things that they like to write or the kinds of things that they like to post about. That was really important.
What
So
was the reception like for that? Did everyone answer? Did a couple of
yes,
them?
I had I think the conversion rate was something like 8% or something like that. There's just a handful of people that even bothered. And yeah, so it was really small. But of course, that was before the campaign started. Reaching out to all these guys, and I only got like a couple, people to respond. And after that, I knew, I could keep pushing, more and more. But I think a lot of these guys want to see whatever you're talking about at least up and running before they do anything with it. So I went ahead and I actually just, after a couple of those guys replied to me and they said yes or no, I got a couple yeses, and that was really it in the beginning. And so then I just launched the Kickstarter campaign, and then I reached back out to the guys that I either didn't hear from at all, or that said no, and then sent them a link and just be like, hey, I don't want to be pushy, but I would love it if you just gave me some feedback, and essentially just kind of try to build. What I was trying to do was actually genuinely build a sort of relationship with these bloggers and social media influencers, because they're always good people to know. So that was kind of a touch point for us, a point of connection between me and that other individual, and that's where things started to kind of hit the ground running a little bit, because then these guys were able to see the actual product, the description, what it was about. And that's when more and more people started reaching out to me. And in fact, there was a handful of people that just posted without me even reaching out to me, just because I guess they found it through one channel or another. And it just kind of snowballs from there.
Great. So you talked a little bit about the ecosystem and looking at other ecosystems, or you wanted to find out how they were working. Can you tell us a little bit about what you mean by the ecosystem, and what were the key points that you were looking for when you decided to develop yours?
Absolutely. So, what I mean by when I say ecosystem of the Kickstarter campaign, I really mean, during that, 30 to 60-day period that they have their campaign running, what were they doing? Not just on Kickstarter, but also outside of Kickstarter. So what kind of posts were they making? So, of course, this required a lot of manual work as to going into their Facebook pages, going to their Twitter accounts, looking at their blogs and cross-referencing essentially the dates that Kickstarter campaign was active for, and then also the dates that corresponded with tweets and Facebook posts and updates and blog posts, the whole shebang, right? Mm-hmm. So you're kind of able to get this chronological ordering of how things kind of were put in place for each of those individual products or companies rather, and see kind of how they were interacting with their potential customers, how they were trying to attract more backers to their campaign and that kind of thing. So it was interesting to see, because remember I was talking a little bit about those three tiers of projects that I was looking at, the ones that far exceeded their goal, the ones that met, and the ones that didn't. And you could just see, it was a very clear delineation between how much more concise, but often the companies that really broke their goals, how much they interacted with their potential backers and even their existing backers, and how immersed they were with the communities that they were trying to serve. So you just had a lot of them, it was interesting because you just had a lot of people, just a lot of those big guys anyway, the guys that crushed it, really getting to the heart of all their customers and being involved in the community and talking about not just their product, but even just the whole idea of their product and other companies' offerings in that same space. So it was just interesting to see how all that.
Sure. Well, just looking at yours, 13 updates on a 30-day campaign. Yeah. That's almost half of the days you were updating people.
Right.
A ton of comments on there. How did you break down the kind of payments of each? How did you decide what you wanted to give people? And were you looking at it from a financial standpoint? Like, did you know how much it's going to cost you if you get X? From a manufacturing, what's the structure with that?
Yeah, so as far as the rewards go, in terms of, you give me X amount of money and I give you X amount of product. That was just sheer numbers, right? So I had to really figure out, how much is it going to cost me to manufacture per item? And then, of course, the biggest, the thing that people I think tend to also forget, and I certainly did in the beginning as well, was that your manufacturing costs are just a small part of the whole thing. The real costs come with, the shipping, the quality assurance, the warehousing. Really, shipping is a big one. I mean, that is a very expensive ticket. So I had to make sure that I had my logistics down from a very early standpoint. I needed to know pretty in depth exactly who my manufacturers were, how much they were going to charge me, how the logistics were going to work in terms of shipping and warehousing and fulfillment, and then essentially creating a line item for each of those and saying, here's my cost associated per item. And, of course, if you average it all out, you can kind of get a per item cost. And in doing so, I was able to get a pretty accurate measure of how much each of my notebooks were going to cost me per type of notebook, of course. And with that, I was able to kind of create this structure of what I was able to give away, what I was able to include, what I could include for free, just to build a little more brand loyalty, that kind of thing. It just had to do with all the numbers and seeing how it all kind of made sense in the long term in terms of profit margins and things like that.
How often did you tweak the message? I see beautifully crafted notebooks for creatives. How quickly did that come around? Have been kind of A/B testing that? Is that the first time? What made you kind of come up with that tagline for it? And what did it take for you to get to that kind of text?
Sure. Yeah. So I think the whole tagline there was really, I needed something that piqued attention, but I didn't want to get I think it was about the third or fourth iteration of getting that message. And it's a pretty simple message, but I think a lot of it came down to how do I encapsulate what I want to, accomplish with this brand, and more specifically, this product with this campaign, and how will I get somebody to take, the 2 seconds that they're going to glance over this little tile that's going to have my project picture on it, the name, and the little text on the bottom. How am I going to convince somebody to give me that click, And one of the things that I was really realizing as I was browsing Kickstarter was that a lot of times, people for different projects would try to add a whole bunch of text. And so what would happen is that because, the amount of text they had was so large, it would start to gray out at the bottom and be lost. So a lot of your message wouldn't fit into the little space that Kickstarter gave you, which meant that if you're not getting your entire message across, you've already lost that person, So the first thing that was important for me was to keep it concise, And of course, with that, you have to be kind of broad with the way you kind of establish or have people perceive your brand, but really still encapsulate what you're trying to do. So that whole tagline, beautifully crafted notebooks for creatives, I think it was the smallest amount of words that I could thoroughly describe exactly what I was trying to do here, and it didn't give away as much, but it was just enough, I think, to pique people's interest to give me that click. And then the real content, of course, was in the meat of the Kickstarter page. And that's really where I wanted to draw people. So that was kind of my idea behind it. Now, I didn't A/B test it at all. And, that's obviously something that's going to have to happen as we kind of move more into the e-commerce side of things and the retail side of things versus just a Kickstarter campaign.
So keep it simple, entice people, because you only have a couple of seconds, if that. Think about the commercial effect if you're watching TV or if you're, on your Facebook feed. What's going to get people to stop and pay attention. Don't give too many words when you don't have to, because they might get lost. For someone that doesn't know about you, how can they find out about you? How can they find Code and Quill notebooks online right now, and are they available?
Yeah, so you can certainly go to www.codeandquill.com. And we essentially, we just completed our Kickstarter campaign. We're in the process, of course, of a website redesign as well that'll be launched in April. But at the moment, there are additional pre-orders that are available even after the Kickstarter campaign is done that can still be ordered through our website. And all the information is given there in terms of product description and shipping times and all that kind of stuff. So it's all available there. And so yeah, you can certainly check it out.
So, for someone that might be watching this or listening to it, and they're thinking about, they have an idea and they want to kind of validate it or vet it on Kickstarter, what's the one or two things that you would encourage that person or that company or project to do to not only be successful, but to, kind of make those next steps?
Yeah, sure. Um, I think the biggest thing that was helpful for me, and I would suggest to anybody else looking to get into this, is find some small group of people that fall into your intended target audience, and wherever they're congregating, get involved first. Go in there, whether it's an online forum or for example, Reddit or something like that. Go on there, be involved, understand what the needs and wants of all these individuals are, what their complaints are, so that you can more accurately solve their problems and make sure that whatever product you're conceptualizing actually does have a place in this market. That was huge for me, and I would definitely suggest that to everybody else. And lastly, once you actually make that step and you're really looking forward to getting into that Kickstarter ecosystem, biggest thing is just, make sure you have your bloggers and influencers all ready to go before you even hit that open button. You don't want to waste precious Kickstarter time to get your logistics and all that kind of stuff together. You want to have that ready beforehand.
Yeah, have a step-by-step kind of plan of what you're going to do.
Exactly.
So what are the last question? What are the next steps for Code and Quill? And if there's anything else that you wanted to mention, what is it?
Sure. Well, the next steps are, obviously we've already put in our orders, so everything's coming in, manufacturers and everything's ready to go, and we are about to get into some retail shops internationally and start selling on our e-commerce site. So basically, really turning this into a full-fledged product and company to be selling through various channels and increase our product offerings here shortly over some time. So that's kind of the next step for us. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. It's been a pleasure, being able to talk to you.
Yeah. So I just thought of one thing. So being, in Virginia Beach, how does being in an area like Virginia Beach or in, that area or our area, what does that mean to your business, and how can leveraging that area grow your brand, if at all, or does it not matter?
Well, I think that I've already this was actually somewhat surprising to me. I actually didn't have any particular focus on
How's it going?
doing the whole staying in Virginia Beach and launching the product because I was in Virginia Beach. It just happened to fall into place that way. But what I noticed is that I've had a lot of local support, actually. A lot of people have contributed to the campaign and have emailed me from the local area that are just interested just because, fellow entrepreneurs or new companies being started here. So there definitely is this really tight-knit group of locals here that I think is amazing, and that's been fantastic so far.
Great. Well, Ronak, I really appreciate your time, and best of luck with the future of Code and Quill. I know that it's definitely something that's a great resource for those creatives that want something beautiful that falls flat, of course. I saw that was something that was really important for you, that lays flat on the ground, and looking forward to your continued success.
Great. Well, it was a pleasure being here, man. Thanks a lot.